What if some of the most stressful moments in your life are happening inside your mind, before anything has actually gone wrong? Think about that for a second. Your heart starts beating faster. Your stomach feels tight. You replay possible conversations. You imagine rejection, failure, embarrassment, bad news, financial problems, health problems, or something happening to someone you love. And yet, none of it has happened. So why does your body react as if it has? Why can something that exists only as a possibility feel so real that it ruins your mood today? The answer is more revealing than it might seem. Your brain is not simply trying to make you miserable. In many cases, it is trying to protect you. The problem is that your mind has an incredible ability to imagine the future, but your emotional system does not always know the difference between preparing for a possibility and repeatedly living through it before it arrives. That is why anxiety about the future can feel so exhausting. You are not only dealing with life as it is. You are also dealing with dozens of versions of life that might happen. Maybe you sent an important message and the person has not replied yet. Within a few minutes, your mind starts asking questions. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset with me? Did I misunderstand the situation? What if this changes everything? The silence itself may mean nothing. But uncertainty gives your imagination an empty space, and your anxious mind is often more than willing to fill that space with a story. And unfortunately, anxiety rarely chooses the most neutral story. It tends to ask, what could go wrong? This makes sense from a survival perspective. Human beings developed the ability to anticipate danger because anticipating danger could keep us alive. If you heard something moving in the bushes thousands of years ago, assuming it was nothing could be risky. Assuming it might be dangerous could keep you alert. The problem is that the modern brain can use that same protective system for things that are not physically happening in front of you. An unanswered email can become a threat. A meeting next week can become a threat. A medical appointment can become a threat. A difficult conversation that has not even happened can become a threat. Your brain does not need the future to arrive before it begins preparing for it. And this is where something important happens. Preparation can quietly turn into rehearsal. Rehearsal can turn into obsession. And obsession can make an imagined future feel emotionally real. You may tell yourself that you are just thinking ahead. But sometimes you are not actually preparing for the future. You are repeatedly experiencing an emotional version of it. Imagine that you have an important presentation in 2 weeks. A healthy form of preparation might sound like this. I should organize my ideas, practice, and prepare for possible questions. That is useful. But anxiety may take the same situation and transform it. What if I forget what to say? What if everyone notices I am nervous? What if someone asks me something I cannot answer? What if I embarrass myself? What if this affects my career? What if this one moment changes how everyone sees me? Notice what happened. The original event was a presentation. But anxiety turned it into a chain reaction. One uncomfortable possibility became evidence of a much larger imagined disaster. This is one of the strange things about anxiety. It often does not stop at the first problem. It keeps moving forward, asking, and then what? And then what? And then what? Until a small uncertainty becomes an entire future catastrophe that you have emotionally experienced dozens of times. But here is something worth noticing. Your mind may be trying to reduce uncertainty, even when it is actually increasing your suffering. Many anxious people believe that if they think about every possible outcome, they will finally feel prepared. So they keep analyzing. They replay conversations. They search for hidden meanings. They imagine worst-case scenarios. They try to predict what other people will do. They try to solve problems that do not exist yet. But uncertainty cannot always be solved through more thinking. Sometimes more thinking simply creates more material for anxiety to work with. This is why you can spend hours worrying about the future and still feel completely unprepared for it. Because anxiety is often searching for something that life cannot provide. A guarantee. You want to know for certain that everything will be okay. You want to know that the person will not reject you. That the test will go well. That the doctor will give you good news. That your job will be secure. That your relationship will survive. That you will not make a mistake. But life does not offer complete certainty. And when your mind has a low tolerance for uncertainty, it may treat not knowing as if something bad is already beginning to happen. That is a powerful psychological shift. Not knowing becomes dangerous. Waiting becomes unbearable. Possibility starts feeling like probability. And probability starts feeling like certainty. Maybe you have noticed this in yourself. You think, I have a feeling something bad is going to happen. But if you look closely, sometimes what you are calling a feeling is actually a prediction. Your body feels anxious, so your mind searches for an explanation. Then it finds one. Something must be wrong. But anxiety itself is not evidence that danger is coming. Feeling afraid does not prove that your prediction is accurate. A racing heart can be your nervous system responding to uncertainty, imagination, memory, or anticipation. The body can react before the event exists. And once the body reacts, the mind may look at those physical sensations and say, see, this must be serious. Then the cycle becomes stronger. You imagine something bad. Your body reacts. You notice the reaction. You interpret the reaction as confirmation. Then you imagine the situation even more vividly. This is why future anxiety can feel so convincing. You are not only thinking the thought. You are feeling the thought. And feelings can make imagined events seem true. Another reason future anxiety becomes so powerful is that the mind often remembers emotional experiences better than logical reminders. You may logically know that you have worried before and survived. You may logically know that many of your past fears never happened. You may even tell yourself, I have been through this before. But when anxiety becomes active, logic can feel distant. The emotional part of your brain is focused on one question. Are we safe? And if the answer is uncertain, your mind may continue scanning for danger. That is why reassurance sometimes helps only temporarily. You ask someone, do you think everything will be okay? They say yes. You feel better. For a little while. Then another thought appears. But what if they are wrong? And the anxiety returns. Because the real problem was never simply the lack of information. It was the need to eliminate uncertainty completely. And that is almost impossible. Here is another small revelation that can change the way you see your own anxiety. Sometimes you are not afraid of the future itself. You are afraid of how you imagine you will feel if the future goes badly. You might think you are afraid of failing. But underneath that, maybe you are afraid of disappointment. Embarrassment. Regret. Feeling powerless. Feeling alone. Being judged. Realizing that you cannot control what happens next. So when you worry about the future, ask yourself something different. What am I actually afraid I would have to feel? That question can reveal much more than simply asking, what am I worried about? Because sometimes the event is not the deepest fear. The emotional meaning of the event is. For example, losing a job is not only about losing a job. For someone, it might represent losing security. For someone else, it might represent feeling like a failure. For another person, it might represent disappointing their family. The same future event can create completely different anxiety depending on what that event means to you. And this is why two people can face the same uncertainty and react in completely different ways. The event is only part of the story. Your interpretation matters too. Your past experiences matter. The things you learned about safety, failure, control, and rejection can all influence how your mind responds to the future. Maybe you learned early in life that mistakes had serious consequences. Maybe you experienced unpredictable situations that made you feel powerless. Maybe you were criticized heavily when you failed. Maybe something painful happened unexpectedly, and part of you learned that danger can appear without warning. If so, it makes sense that your mind might become highly focused on trying to predict what comes next. Prediction can feel like protection. If I can see it coming, maybe it cannot hurt me. But there is a difference between being aware and being constantly on guard. Constantly preparing for pain does not necessarily protect you from pain. Sometimes it simply makes you experience it earlier. You suffer before the event. Then, if the event actually happens, you suffer again. And if it never happens, you spent all that emotional energy preparing for a reality that never arrived. This is sometimes called living in the future before you get there. And it can steal your ability to experience the present. You are having dinner with your family, but your mind is in next month's meeting. You are on vacation, but your mind is already imagining what could go wrong when you return home. You finally achieve something important, but instead of enjoying it, your mind asks, "What if I lose it?" This is one of anxiety's most frustrating habits. It can turn good moments into waiting rooms for bad ones. But there is another way to understand this. Your anxious mind is not necessarily trying to predict the future because it knows something you do not. It may simply be uncomfortable with not knowing. That distinction matters. You do not have to treat every anxious thought as a warning. Sometimes it is just your mind asking for certainty in a world that cannot give it. So what can you do when you notice yourself becoming anxious about something that has not happened? First, separate the facts from the story. Ask yourself, what do I actually know right now? Not what you fear. Not what you predict. What do you actually know? Maybe the fact is that someone has not replied. That is all. The story is that they are angry, disappointed, losing interest, or planning something negative. The fact is real. The story is possible. But possible is not the same as true. That simple distinction can create space between you and the future your anxiety is creating. Second, ask yourself whether your thinking is leading to action or simply repetition. There is a big difference between problem solving and worrying. Problem solving sounds like, what can I do? Worrying sounds like, what if? If there is something useful you can do, do it. Prepare. Make the call. Study. Save money. Have the conversation. Create a plan. But once you have reached the point where there is nothing else you can realistically do right now, continuing to think may not be preparation anymore. It may be anxiety asking you to repeat the same mental movie one more time. And one more time. And one more time. Third, practice allowing uncertainty to exist without immediately trying to destroy it. This can feel uncomfortable at first. Your mind may say, but what if something really does happen? And the honest answer is, something could happen. That is always true. But you do not need to solve every possible future in order to live today. You can say, I do not know what will happen, and I can handle not knowing right now. That sentence may sound simple, but psychologically, it can represent a major shift. You are no longer demanding certainty before allowing yourself to feel calm. You are learning that uncertainty and safety can sometimes exist at the same time. You do not know exactly what will happen tomorrow. And you are still here. You do not know exactly what someone else is thinking. And you can continue living your life. You do not know whether everything will go perfectly. And you do not need perfection in order to move forward. Another powerful question is this. If the thing I am afraid of actually happened, would I really be as helpless as I imagine? Often, the answer is no. It might be painful. It might be difficult. You might not like it. But difficult is not the same as impossible. Your anxious mind may picture the future as a moment where you are completely unprepared and powerless. But the future version of you will have information that you do not have yet. You will respond to the actual situation, not to every imagined possibility at once. This is something anxiety often forgets. You are trying to solve tomorrow's problems with today's limited information. But when tomorrow arrives, you may have more options, more knowledge, more support, and more strength than you can currently imagine. You do not need to have every answer today. You only need to deal with what is actually in front of you when it arrives. And perhaps the deepest lesson is this. Anxiety about the future can make you believe that peace will come once you finally know that nothing bad is going to happen. But peace may not come from knowing the future. It may come from trusting yourself more. Trusting that you can face uncertainty. Trusting that you can adapt. Trusting that you have survived things you once thought you would never get through. You do not need to predict every storm to know that you can learn how to stand in the rain. The future will always contain unknowns. There will always be unanswered questions. There will always be possibilities that you cannot control. But your life is not happening inside every possible future. It is happening here. In this moment. And maybe the next time your mind tries to pull you into a future that has not happened, you can pause and remind yourself of something important. This is a possibility, not a prophecy. This is a thought, not an event. I do not need to solve a life that I am not living yet. Because sometimes the greatest relief does not come from finally discovering that nothing bad will ever happen. It comes from realizing that you do not have to abandon the present just because the future is uncertain. You can breathe here. You can live here. You can enjoy something without knowing how long it will last. You can move forward without knowing every step. And you can stop rehearsing disasters long enough to notice that, right now, in this exact moment, the thing you are afraid of may still exist only in your mind. The future will arrive when it arrives. You do not have to arrive there before it does. If this helped you understand your mind better, subscribe for more videos like this.